Serious. What is an experience you've had that you cannot logically explain? Please do like, share, and subscribe. Had a dream where someone interrupted my dream to tell me I only had 6 months left, 6 months after I was diagnosed with a brain tumor. It was the harmless type, and this was 15 years ago, but it still freaks me out to this day. My wife had passed away 3 or 4 days earlier. I'm standing in the kitchen at the stove, and my daughter is behind me. All of a sudden, I turn around real quick and say to her, "Did you just touch my back?" That's when I see she couldn't have, because she is at the sink at least 5 feet away. It felt like a hand had rested itself on the small of my back. I know what I felt that day, and I still don't know for sure what it was, but in my mind, I will always be convinced it was my wife. I was working at Toys R Us in the late 90s. It was late fall, and we were running small night crews, 4 to 5 guys, in preparation for the Christmas rush. One night, I'm the only one who shows up. Closing manager tells me I can split if I don't want to be alone in the building all night. You got locked in. I'm fine with it. Actually thought it would be kinda cool. They close up, set the alarm, and leave. I'm now alone until 7 a.m. We would use dial-up the store intercom and broadcast the radio over it to stop the crappy music from playing awful 80s light hits. I grab the radio and dial up the intercom and set it up. The next few hours were quiet and uneventful until suddenly I hear click and the music starts again. I go over to the front desk where I had the radio and it's still there playing. The phone is still off the receiver right next to where I left it. Okay. I redialed the intercom and head back to the aisle I was working at. Not even 20 minutes later, click, and again the music starts. I go back to the desk. Nothing is moved or anything, radio still playing. Receiver still off the hook. Let me be clear, this has never happened before. We had been doing the trick with the intercom for weeks at this point, and never did it ever just hang up on its own like that, ever. I'm starting to get a little freaked out now. It's like 3 a.m. at this point, and I still got a few hours to go. But I'm telling myself, it must just be the phone. Let me move to a different location. So I head over to a random register and set it up. It's fine for like 2 hours or so before click. Okay, now I'm officially freaked out. It's like someone is hanging up the receiver with their finger. I head over to the sporting good aisle and grab a wooden t-ball bat and start walking the whole store. Is someone in here fucking with me? I walk the whole store and warehouse. Nothing. Not a soul. I tried to get back to work and just leave the music on, but I could not focus. The hair on the back of my neck would not go down, and I just fucked off to the manager's office at the front of the store and locked myself in until the morning crew showed up at 7. For the rest of the season, we continued the trick with the radio, and it did not repeat what happened that night. Not once, not ever. It only happened that one night I was alone in the store. Can't explain it. I worked nights at an Office Depot in the early 2000s. There were 2, at most 3 of us locked in the store overnight. The manager would let us out at 6 a.m. No one could come in or out without setting off the alarm. It started with footsteps down the hallway. My coworker and I would be in the back office printing signs, and all of a sudden, you'd hear someone walking down the hallway toward us. One of us would peek out, and there was no one there. One night, we're working, and around 3 a.m., the store phone keeps ringing. My coworker finally picks it up, listens for a few seconds, then says, "Sorry, you have the wrong number," and hangs up. Rings again. Same girl. He hangs up. Calls again. This time, he puts her on speaker. She's crying, sobbing. "Why won't you talk to me? What's wrong with you?" Coworker. "Ma'am, you have the wrong number. Stop calling." He hangs up. He looks at me and says, "This is fucking weird, man." I tell him it's just some crazy chick calling, no biggie. Phone rings again. He puts it on speaker. "I'm not crazy." Click. She hangs up and never calls again. Scared the ever-loving shit out of us. One night, I'm stocking the supply side of the store, envelopes and stuff like that. My coworker comes running over from tech and heads to the next aisle over. He says there's someone in the store. I think he's messing with me, but he's clearly disturbed by it. We searched the store, and no one is there. I asked what he saw, and he says there was a man walking parallel to me on the next aisle. He was up on the ladder stocking printers and saw him. He was extremely spooked by this. One night, 3 of us are working together on one aisle, goofing off really, and we hear a man's voice on the other side of the store yell out, "What the hell?" at the top of his lungs. It scared all of us so badly, we called the morning manager. He was not happy and told us to quit fucking around. When I took off 2 weeks for my honeymoon, the guy that got to cover for me lasted 1 week before he quit. I ran into him a few weeks after I got back and asked him what happened. He said he couldn't do it. He kept seeing people standing there out of the corner of his eye, but when he looked, there was no one there. The night crew stopped when I left. My coworker quit, and they hired a woman to replace him. Her second night, she came up to me and said the back of her neck was on fire. I looked, and she had these fresh, deep red scratches running from her neck to the middle of her back. It scared the hell out of her. That was the last straw for me. I quit a few days later. I wear a sun symbol necklace. It was handmade out of a single bit of metal and has a loop at the top to thread a cord or chain through. I was walking along with my daughter on my shoulders when I hear a ting on the floor in front of me. I look down and my necklace sun symbol is on the floor. I check the cord around my neck. It is still tied and in one piece. So I check the symbol. The metal loop is still solid. WTF? How did the symbol detach from the cord without breaking the cord or the loop? To this day, I have no clue. I was taking my kid to a doctor's appointment, and as we were walking from the car, everything around us just stopped. It was only for just a brief moment, and then everything went back to normal. What was weird was everything went silent too, which never happens there since it was right by one of the busiest intersections in town. I could also blow it off as just my imagination, but as soon as it happened, my kid asked me if time just stopped. Ordered pizza and put 3 slices on a plate. Went to sit down with it to watch TV, and when I went for a slice, nothing was on the plate. Went to the pizza box and saw it was complete. No sign of disturbance. Took 3 slices again, and then looked at it until I sat down and went to get a slice. Plate was empty, and went to look at the box and saw the pizza was still whole. I just ate there and then took a nap. I went to my doctor the next day to see if I suffered a stroke, or I may have suffered a memory lapse thing. All okay? So, to preface this story, I have schizoaffective disorder, meaning I have the hallucinations and delusions of a schizophrenic, but they're all affected by a mood disorder. So, back in my junior year, I remember going into a serious panic attack and I hid under the computer desk, just staring into space trying to calm down. 2 of the voices were talking to me and I couldn't seem to calm down. One of them then said, "Wait here, I'll go get someone," which didn't make any sense to me because he isn't real and no one else can see him. 2 seconds later, a guy from my class was kneeling down in front of me, asking if I was having a panic attack because, apparently, people in his family did. A couple hours later, I get to a class where we had a test that I totally forgot about. I was sitting at the desk in class, about to have another panic attack because I didn't know the answers. I then heard one of the voices say, "Okay, we're getting you out of here." And I'm like, how? Then the fire alarm goes off. Keep in mind, I had no clue that we were having a fire drill that day, much less in that period. So I got about a 15-minute break outside, and then I was able to go back and complete the test without a panic attack. One summer when I was a teenager, my cousin came to visit with her then infant son, and my mom took the 2 of them to the zoo. My mom told me to call on my cousin's phone if I was going anywhere, since my mom wasn't bringing her phone with her. About an hour later, I decided to bike to my friend's house. I instinctively called my mom on her phone to let her know, forgetting that she didn't have her phone with her. Once I remembered, I hung up and started to dial my cousin's number. Then the phone rang. It was my mom's number. Somehow, her phone called me back on its own, even though it was in her car, which was locked in front of the house. I ran outside to confirm this. To this day, I have no idea how her phone was able to call me back. And no, I didn't answer the call. I was driving with my wife in the car on a dark rural road, very starry night. I noticed a huge spot off to the right where there were no stars, just black, like a giant oval hole in the sky. Then suddenly, it shot off to the left and disappeared. We hadn't been married long, so I didn't want her to think I was a nut, so I just asked, "Did you see that?" She had. No idea what it was. A car accident that didn't happen. I was about to make a turn. I looked both ways and saw absolutely zero incoming traffic. I turn right and bam, I'm hit, and my front bumper comes off. There is zero reason for this accident to happen, as the road had absolutely no cars on it, and I could see down for a good quarter of a mile both ways. I'm dumbfounded. He asked how I didn't see him, and I was in too much of shock to answer. This accident could not have happened as there were no cars on the road. My eyesight is good, so I don't understand how I could miss an obvious car coming down the road. Speed limit was 35, so even a speeding car I would notice. His car only had a minor scrape, while my front bumper was torn off. Also, my headlight was busted. He decided to just paint over it, but we exchanged our insurance info and went on our separate ways. I put my bumper into the back seat and went to work. I didn't get any phone call or anything regarding the accident. When I left work that afternoon, I noticed my bumper was now on and attached. No sign of damage, no busted headlights, nothing. The notebook where I had written the guy's information no longer had it, and my phone where I took pictures, the pictures were gone. To this very day, I cannot explain it. Did I hallucinate an entire car accident? Imagined it? Or did the universe decide it really was impossible for the accident to happen and thus reversed it somehow? I don't know. I cannot make any sense of it. I used to live in a high-rise block of apartments in a kinda shitty neighborhood. One time, I was about 16, smoking a cigarette down outside the main doors, waiting for a friend to pick me up. This guy, who I see in and around the block all the time, never speaks a word to me ever. He looks 100% like he's on hard drugs. But anyway, this guy strolls on up to me, and I'm thinking, oh, here we go. He's gonna ask for a smoke and some change or whatever the case is. But nope. Dude grips the cigarette I'm smoking. It's past the halfway point at this point, and chucks it into his mouth like it's food and starts chomping away at it. Starts swallowing over and over again because it's obviously burned his mouth, and all the bits are stuck everywhere. Walks off like nothing ever happened. Me and my mates lived by the coast of Scotland. For fun, when we were teenagers, we would walk below the cliffs along the rocks doing parkour on the way. There was an open cave. It didn't go into the cliffs, so we decided to take a shortcut and go through the cave, only about 50 meters long at most. As we exited the cave, we kept on walking below the cliffs for about a mile until we realized the tide was coming in fast, so we had to get back. We decided to go back through this cave again as it was quicker, but as we were about halfway in, we all heard a little girl laughing, and it was very unsettling. Didn't even sound human, to be honest, and we all just turned back and ran. We decided to just go around the cave and take the long route. Pretty freaky. Woke up in the middle of the night one day. My eyes were still foggy from sleep, but I could see the shape of a person standing in front of me. It looked like they were half crouched, with their hands on their knees and their head kind of tilted, as if they were trying to get a good look at my face. I remember being confused because I thought it was my mom, and I was wondering why she was just looking at me like that. My eyes then adjusted, and I realized this person didn't have any features. It was like a shadow person, but was gray and staticky looking. I got scared and closed my eyes hoping it would go away. I guess I must have fallen asleep after a while, because next thing I know it was morning. Definitely really weird. I have a ton of other weird experiences too that seemingly have no explanation. That was one of the creepiest. I've been waiting for this one. Long story short, literally every day a thought will go through my mind of a video or a picture or something like that. And it's usually a couple hours later. I'll see the exact picture or video that I saw in my mind. It seems strange, but I know people say that our phones track everything we do and listen to us talk. That's how they get specific ads for us. And it's like there's something in my brain telling something somewhere else what I'm thinking. It's gotten to the point where I'd write down the things I thought about and the time. Then, when I'd see the thing I thought about, I'd put the time next to that. So yeah, please, if someone can explain this, please help me out. It's getting creepy. In the mid-90s, I was about 14. My family took a weekend trip to Nashville to go to Opryland. The night before we go, I had a terrible nightmare that the shoulder harness on a roller coaster we were riding was faulty and I fell out. So the next day at the park, my mom, sis, and I get on the exact same roller coaster. I sat in the car in front of them by myself and the shoulder harness would not lock in place. I freak out. The ride is about to start. I start screaming. A ride operator comes over and manually locks the harness in place so the ride can begin. When we get off the ride, they shut off that car so no one else can ride it. I will never again ride an upside-down roller coaster. Got a good one. Aside from ghost sightings from old military buildings, woke up. My bed was soaked. I thought maybe I peed myself. I was 19 at the time, but my clothes were 100% dry. So maybe I thought my clothes had dried, so I checked my underwear and it was dry. Okay, so then maybe I sweat a lot and it was just dried up. Normally when I have night sweats, I'll have that distinct smell of salt and a little sticky, but nope, I was clean. As a last resort, I smelled the bed where it was wet. Dude, it was straight up water, literally water. It didn't smell like pee, and it didn't smell like sweat. I never found an explanation, and to this day, it haunts me. A number of synchronicities or meaningful coincidences. Here is one really weird example. Once, when driving home from work, I decided to pick a random 2-digit number and count how many times I see it in license plates of other cars, just for fun. I picked the number 86. I then saw 2 cars in a row with 86s. I thought this was a pretty rare occurrence. The next morning while driving to work, I saw a car with an 8686. When I got to work, I saw a woman in a building with a shirt that had a large 86 on it. Amazed, I decided to look up the number 86 on a brake to see if it had special significance. Turns out, 86 means nix or stop. This was really the first time I even learned of the word nix, and I'll be darned if I didn't see a license plate saying nix on the way home that day. Many may not believe me, and if you don't, so be it. Just keep scrolling. But when I was younger, I was at my grandparents' campgrounds just doing whatever a child does in summer. Near the end of the day, I looked up into the sky, and right above the tree line, maybe 10 to 20 feet above the trees, so 40 to 60 feet in the air, I saw what I can only describe as a UFO. It was a silver disc with a couple little lights on the side, and it was just slowly moving along the air like a car driving down the road at 10 kilometers an hour. I only saw it for probably 15 seconds, and sadly, I was the only person outside. The only thing I could think of after about 10 seconds of staring was get Grandma, so I called for her multiple times, and she finally came outside after it had just passed the tree line. I told her what I saw, and I was pretty shaken up, but I don't think she believed me. At the time, I had my iPhone 4 in my pocket, but I was so mesmerized by it I couldn't think to take a picture. That night, I went to sleep slightly scared now, believing that aliens come visit Earth and that the videos on YouTube could be real. I asked my grandma if she remembered that day a couple of years later, and she told me she didn't. That's why I assumed she didn't believe me. I feel like no matter who I tell this to, they just think I'm some kid trying to get a reaction with a made-up story. That's why I cannot logically explain my story to anyone, because it's a UFO, and I can't prove I saw it, and I never will be able to. TLDR, I saw a UFO, and it saddens me deeply that nobody will ever believe me. I can explain it, but it's very rare that people will actually understand what I'm saying. But I used to work in cat rescue, and now I live by the sea. The sounds of seagulls sound close enough to the sound of a stressed cat that even from the deepest sleep, I will spring out of bed ready for action. What action do I think I'm going to do? No idea. Why do I act like I'm shell-shocked by the sound of cats when I never had bad experiences and even still have pet cats? Also, no idea. Do seagulls actually sound like cats? Also, no idea.